Welcome to the Livestock Overview of PAM QA+. As you can see, there's a livestock icon at the top of the screen and a wool icon at the top of the screen. These denote the livestock sections of the program. If I click on the livestock icon, what this does is brings up our livestock activity diary, and it sorts everything by year, month and day. So you can click on any particular day and have a look at the details of what was done on that particular day. If you double click on a job, it brings up the actual details of that job, so you can see everything. Everything is entered through the add button in here. It brings up the activity wizard, so we can basically enter things like altering body weights, condition scores, livestock unit ratings. We can alter mob numbers, record births, matings, mob movements, preg tests, purchases, sales, splitting and joining stock classes or mobs, record supplementary feeding, and record any veterinary treatments or manual tasks. Let's record a mob movement. We'll do this on the 26th. As you can see, the screen is made up into two parts. We have the mobs to move and the paddocks to move to. We can show all animals or just the different categories. If I just show the sheep, for example, we have paddock 5, 8, 9, 12 and the various mobs within them. If there's multiple mobs within a paddock, they'll show up here. We can also sort that by mob. So where a mob is spread over multiple paddocks, it will show them with the paddock numbers. So we want to bring these two mobs of white tag ewes back into a single paddock. If we just select those white ewes, and on the right hand side we can select a paddock to move them to. Click on the next button. It then tells us how many we're going to move. We can update the condition score, the livestock rating or the body weight, and we can also change the total amount moved and say that we left some in the paddock if we wish. Hit the finish button and that records the movement. If we go back into the mob movement now, we'll see that the white tag ewes are all in one paddock. Likewise, if you want to split a mob up over several paddocks, you can select a mob and choose 2 paddocks or more, and that will allocate them automatically according to the hectares of each paddock, so they get the even stocking rate. That's what we call the automatic or gates open mode. We can switch to a manual or gates closed mode, where we actually nominate how many go in the first paddock and second paddock and so on. Hit the finish button and that records that. Let's do a veterinary treatment, for example. Hit the next button. Let's drench all the ewes. So if we click on the female codes, that's the ewes. Hit the next button. We can then choose the operation, the consumable, the method, the rate per head, and we can also record a batch number, then hit the finish button. That records the drenching for all of those animals. We hit the close button now. You'll see on the 26th we've got our mob movements showing from paddocks and to paddocks. We've got our veterinary tasks here with the rates per head, the cost per head and the total. If we double click on them, we can have a look at the details that we entered. You can also filter the diary by activities and by mob code. So if you just wanted to have a look at days that you did a certain operation or operations carried out on a certain mob, you can choose them and that will filter your activities diary just to those mobs. There are several instant reports you can pull up from this screen. Today's events, mob paddock listing, paddock mob listing, empty paddocks listing, category mob numbers, category total numbers, mob losses report, paddocks under quarantine, mobs under quarantine, and trail feeding times. There's also a series of reports in our reports menu under livestock, reports and graphs. In the graphs we can do reports such as paddock grazing histories comparison, age, sex, numbers graphs, and wool history graphs. There are quite a few printed reports as well: activities diary reports, livestock weight reports, death, sales, purchases reports, livestock gross margins, matings, births, offspring percentages, mob histories, paddock status and grazing histories, reconciliation reports, stock paddock reports, treatments, feedings and operation reports, and wool reports. For example, let's go and have a look at a livestock gross margin report. There's gross margin by paddock. We'll go back a few years and generate the report. So what this is the livestock gross margin by paddock for the period above. So there's the income by paddock. That is all allocated out to the paddock by grazing days. If we did the same report by mobs, it will bring up each mob with the date and the details of each operation and the costs associated with it. That will then total the costs down the bottom. Just like the cropping side of the program, you can save these reports to a favourites list, you can export them to various file types, and you can email them. Some of the other reports you may be interested in is a paddock status and grazing histories report, where you can get movements in and out of paddocks, paddock stocking rates at any date, paddock grazing histories, annual paddock grazing histories, annual paddock average kilograms per hectare per millimetre of rainfall, and 12-period paddock grazing history reports. Stocking rate at any particular date. If you pull that up, it'll bring up the paddock, the livestock units, the total number of livestock, the livestock units per hectare, and also livestock units per square kilometre. That will also subtotal it by farm if you have multiple farms. Livestock treatments and feeding operations reports. For example, we can have that listed by mob, by activity, by paddock, and so on. So if we do that by activity, we can choose drenching, sheep. I'll just take this up a day, generate the report, and here's that drenching operation we put in. So all the mobs listed on the property, the paddock, the tally, the rate per head, the total quantity, and total cost. So that's Survivor Mech. If we do that by mob and generate the report, you can see here it has separated it out into the different mobs. Reconciliation reports. We can have a category list grouped by farm, category list by overall totals, or an age sex category report. If I do that one, that will list up the different categories of livestock and the ages and the number of each age group, with the totals on the right hand side. You can just do that by category, which will give you a bit more detailed report of cattle and sheep and a breakdown of the mob numbers as well. The wool book section of the program allows you to replicate the wool book that's kept in the shearing shed. So when you do a shearing, you say what mobs are shorn, they appear across the top of the screen, and then we record the types of wool and bale numbers in there. We allocate the types of wool to certain bale numbers and to mobs, which generates this matrix of kilograms of each wool type to each mob. We can set up the wool lots, so give it a lot number and say what bales are in each lot, and then we can feed in the test results giving us total income and then give us an overall wool summary report. You can also feed in expenses for wool levies, wool tax, shearing and so on to give your net income. If you have the mapping section of the program as well, you can do your mob movements on the map. Simply a case of clicking on mob moves. You can choose the date that you're going to move things. I'll make this the 27th. If there's any mobs in the yards, they will appear in this screen here, or if you want to move a mob back to the yards, we can grab hold of them out of the paddock, drag them across to the yards, and that will move them back into the yards. We can move mobs from one paddock to another by simply dragging them, and that will record the movement. If we split a mob over multiple paddocks, what we do is drag them to the first paddock, move half of them, saying we're leaving the balance in the paddock, and then move the other half to the other paddock. Moving livestock out of the yards to a paddock, simply drag it across, let go, and that's moved the mob. All of those movements that we've done there have been recorded in our livestock activities diary for the 27th. That is a quick overview of the livestock section of the PAM QA Plus program. You can have a look at the other overviews for paddock and crop recording as well as mapping. Thank you for your time.